Okay, so the first question comes from SC Trojan. He says, do you genuinely think that we're going to have a V-shaped recovery? I really don't know if it's going to be V-shaped or what people really mean by V-shaped. I mean, it really depends on how steep of a V you're expecting. I think it's pretty obvious we already had a recovery. I mean, a lot of things have recovered. But I think really the more relevant question is, are there some industries that will be doing better in the future regardless? So maybe it'll be a weak recovery, but a company like Coke in 5-10 years, do you think they'll still be a growing business, and are they cheap now? So I think it's kind of it's difficult for anyone to know really how steep the recovery will be. But it's important to know that I do believe that we've passed the worst point. Okay, second question from Mick Lassen. He says, do you agree that much of China's recent boom has resulted in a housing bubble in the large cities? I think, yeah, for sure. And I think one big reason is that for a lot of people in China, they actually don't have many options for an investment. So really, housing, real estate is one of really the most, you have to think in terms of their history, even the banking system maybe wasn't always dependable. So the most dependable thing to have is really land and property. And now, obviously now stocks are another option. But I think, yeah, historically that's sort of really one of their few options, and so they're all going into it. And obviously stimulative policies in China are stimulating that. And in a place like Hong Kong, then you also have ultra low interest rates. So another question, do you think that China will be able to sustain its growth? I think China's going to grow for sure in the long term. I think that's so I think yes, they'll sustain it. The most likely scenario is that, yeah, they keep growing rapidly. They might have some violent slowdown, maybe this year or in a few years, but still the long-term path, is for growth. It just wouldn't make sense for so many people that have such a lower standard of living to not sort of be able to use all the technologies and innovations that we have in developed countries and do sort of it's basically tech transfer to develop its own country. So I think, yeah, the growth path is for sure. It's just that it's a matter of, has it gone too fast most recently, and will there be some pretty sharp downturn in the near term? Another question from Jim: is it true that ethanol can end global warming concerns in 10 years? I think this question, my global warming concerns have already ended, so I think that's not really relevant. Another question from Sir Lorenz. If the oil price would be determined by a simple supply-demand mechanism, would it be higher or lower than $50? I think I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say it would be lower. The reason being is that you have OPEC. So OPEC is purposely restricting the amount of oil that exists basically on the market at any time. Right now, OPEC actually, its surplus capacity is actually, I think it's at like a multi-year high right now. So I think for sure, obviously, if you didn't have a giant group of nations restricting the amount of oil out there, oil prices would be far lower. And I'll go out on a limb and say that'd be well below $50. Another question from GP. Is it time to sell yet? Sell what? I'm guessing stocks. These things are tough. I think it all depends on the stock. Obviously, the market's come a long way, but I think it depends on the industry. I would say an interesting place to look, and we actually talked about this yesterday, is to actually look at, rather than fully selling stocks, actually taking out put protection, which is essentially buying put options to protect your stocks. I think for some names that might make sense. Another question from Sir Lorenz. He asks, what's the best place to party in Bangkok? I think it really depends on what you're looking for. There's quite a few places. I would say if you are in town there and you want like a sort of a really nice place, there's something called the State Tower, where you can basically, it's a huge open air bar on the 60th floor of this huge tower. It's quite nice. if you're looking for something just like sort of local and just nuts, I would say you want to go to this place called RCA. It's a giant strip of clubs with music blasting in the streets and yeah, thousands of people. It's pretty fun. Another question about Thailand. What's the cost of living in Bangkok? It really depends how you want to live. You can live really cheap. You can also live at a pretty high standard of living. But I would say overall, it's about half the cost of the U.S. Yeah, you can live quite well. It's easy to have a nice condo, swimming pool, maid services, nice food, weekend trips to islands, and you can do that on basically a normal salary. Have you traded or done market-related work? Yeah, I mean, I've personally been investing my own money for quite some time now. I've worked both on the buy and sell side. So I've worked at a buy-side portfolio manager. I've worked with a multi-strategy hedge fund called Riley Capital Partners. I also worked with Macquarie, in case you know them, in Thailand. And I've worked with Citi Investment Research in both Thailand and Hong Kong. Do you have any political philosophy, so to speak? Yeah, I think I'm generally very, I guess people would say, I mean, I like to have economic freedoms in countries. So I generally lean towards anything that allows individuals and individual groups or corporations to have the freedom to pursue their own economic interests, as long as you don't obviously infringe on other people's rights. At the same time, though, I have to admit I'm a bit nuanced, where I'm not like some ultra-libertarian. I actually do believe in having some sort of social safety net, because I do think there are people who just fall into bad times and bad luck. And those people, actually, I think it's more productive in the long term to kind of catch those people and help them sort of rehabilitate themselves into the economy, rather than just let them crash and burn. So I'm a bit nuanced there, but I would say I lean towards sort of having them a liberal economy. Finally, from Don Flamenco, do you think being openly biased is the future of journalism? Yes, I do. I think it's a whole different situation now. There's tons of information out there. If you just want straight data, it's on the web, it's everywhere. I think if there's no opinion or analysis, then it's just that, it's just data. If you want actual value on your information, I think there should be opinion and analysis, because that's a perspective which really means everything. So that's it. Hopefully, I'll see you next time, and thanks a lot for watching.